Hello everyone, this is Chino Rodriguez, and in this video I'm going to go ahead and show you how to perform link cloning. Now link cloning is one of my favorite features with VirtualBox. Essentially what it allows you to do is, let's say that you needed four different test environments. So let's say you needed two client accounts, you needed a domain controller, and then you also needed a file server. So assuming that in the domain controller you had DNS and DHCP, and then you just wanted to have a separate box just for your file server, those four machines would essentially take up a lot of space on your disk drive. So, for argument's sake, let's just say that we selected 50 gigs of hard disk space. And so now that's 200 gigabytes of disk space that you're using from your host machine to your guest machine. And so essentially what you want to do is use as limited amount of resources as possible. You want to, perform efficiency. And so with link cloning, that technology allows you to do that. So once you have the base machine as we created in a previous video, what you would do is you would have the machine powered off, and as a safety measure, what I would do is go to the settings, then go to storage. I'm sorry, go to general, or I'm sorry, system, and I would uncheck hard disk. What this will do is if I were to fire up this machine, it wouldn't let me. It'll generate an error. So you see how it says fatal could not read the boot medium? And so that's because I went ahead and unchecked under the systems option hard disk. And the reason you want to do that is because, let me go ahead and close this. And you're going to want to select power off the machine. The reason you want to do this is because if you accidentally fire up your base reference image, it can it can affect the other clones that you have, because what the clones do is the clones don't use up any disk space. It looks at the configurations of your reference image. It says, okay, we have 50 gigs, we have the operating system installed, we have the applications installed, assuming that you did sysprep with audit mode. Um, at that point, the only thing that that machine is going to need is going to be uh, basically a configuration log. So anything you do from the time that you fire up the new machine, whatever changes you do from that point on, that's the only thing that'll need saved, because everything else is saved in your reference image. So if you were to fire up your reference image and you just start deleting stuff, it's going to affect the clones. And so what you're going to want to do is do that safety measure that I mentioned. All right, so once you do that, you're going to right click on your reference image and you're going to click or select clone. Here you can name whatever you want to name your new machine. I'm going to name it client 1. And you can, keep on with the naming convention, client 2, 3, or domain controller, whatever that's going to be. Obviously, this is just a client operating system. And so it wouldn't be a domain controller. You would actually have to install Server 2008 or 2012 R2, and then you can do, your DC, your DHCP, DNS. All right, so we're going to go ahead and select client 1, and I'm going to check reinitialize the MAC address of all network cards. So what this is going to do, instead of using the virtual MAC address that the virtual manager provided the reference image, it's actually going to create a new one. And so hypothetically, once you have four different clones running at the same time, if you were to have the same one, you would run into errors. And so when you reinitialize, each one will have a different MAC address, and they can, correspond to internet traffic without any errors. All right, so once you name the machine and once you check reinitialize the MAC address, you're going to want to click next. And then you have two options. You have full cloned and link clone. We're going to do link clone because that's what's going to save system resources. If you were to select full clone, it would actually replicate all the configuration settings of the reference image and just duplicate it. So if you're using 50 gigs of uh, gigabytes of disk space, it's going to take up another 50 for that clone. And so with the linked, it's not going to do that. It's only going to use a config file, and that configuration file is about a half a gig. So it's like 500 megabytes. And so how sweet is that? That you're going to have 4 machines, and in the real world, if you were to have all 4 machines, it would be, assuming that you're doing 50 gigs per machine, uh, that'd be a total of 200, gigs for all those boxes. And so with the link clone, you're just going to have 50 gigs taken from your host drive, and then another gig and a half for just configurations for any changes that are done between all four. Because remember, it for each machine you create, it's only about a half a gig. So I'm sorry, it'd be about 2 gigs for the configuration, which beats 200. 2 out of 200. Heck, I'll do that any day. So we're gonna go ahead and click clone, and there you have it. So I went ahead and it cloned it. The other thing you can do if you want it, let's say you're once you start getting into the server operating system, and you had like an application cluster, you can right click and you can create what's called a group. And so if this was like an application cluster, you can name it, cluster one or app cluster one or whatever the name of that cluster is going to be. For this, I'm just going to rename it to clients. And so then that way, oops, if I can type right. So then once we close this, anything you add into that group, so I can just go ahead and drop this in there. So there goes my clients. And so you can have, the your your server. You can have servers. You can have clients. If we even went to advanced virtualization, we can install pfSense and use a virtual router. Um, And so that's something that we'll get into down the road. But for right now, you're going to go ahead and fire up that client machine. Now remember, it mimicked the same settings as your reference image. So you're going to want to go here and go back into system and make sure that you have the hard disk checked. Because if not, you'll run into that fatal error and it wouldn't fire up. All right, so go ahead and click start. Now because after audit mode, we did out-of-box experience with SysPrep. It'll act as if the machine was being set up for the very first time, which is really nice. And so now you can go ahead and put in a new client name, machine name, etc. So this will only take a few seconds or perhaps a few minutes. Let's see here. Okay, so that's done. And as you can see, it's setting up for the first time. So you're going to go ahead and click next. We're going to type in the name of the user. In this particular case, we'll do, I already used Chino, so let's use a different name. Um, let's use Juan Torres. All right, and then here we're going to file an indicative naming convention. So we'll do test lab machine 2 and click next. And then here you're going to put your super secret password for that user. I can't use I love pizza, so I'll use I love dessert. All right, click space. You can do a password. Hey, I just click space to bypass it. All right, then you're going to want to click next. I'm going to hit skip on the product key. and then uh, technically you're supposed to read the license term and then click accept. I'm going to go ahead and bypass that and click next. And I'm going to skip the updates. Okay, select the work network and you're good to go. So if I did everything correctly, all the applications should show up on the desktop. Okay, there we go. All right, so there goes the applications that I installed. Um, there goes Notepad++. For some reason, the shortcut didn't copy over, and 7-zip as well. But as you can see, the applications are installed on the client machine. And so, as you can see here, there it is, Test Lab Machine 2. And this is under John, or I'm sorry, Juan Torres. So this is uh, your first cloned machine. So technically, you can do, in theory, as many as your disk drive for your host machine will allow. And so this is great when you're experimenting with different applications. You can have, different test environments and then hypothetical production environments that are, already running, and then you can just use one machine to test, how it would react when you install other applications. I have this issue a lot at the hospital. We work with server-based application, and we have a lot of clinical applications. So they're trying to slim it down just to one. But for right now, depending on which location you're at, you might use a different clinical application. And so uh, at one point, we ran into a problem where we would have these reference images for the computers, and once we would load it, some of the applications were just not acting right, and it was because of that, because certain versions weren't playing nice with other versions of the clinical application. And another thing that I want to talk about in a future video is what happens when you have a server web-based application and then the vendor gives you a newer version. And let's say for the time being you needed to use the older version as you're testing the newer one, or perhaps there are different databases. So one will run one version and then the other one will connect to a different database that has different information and it's a different version. What do you do then? So I'll talk about that in a future video. But for right now, you just learned how to link a virtual machine. Congratulations. And thanks for watching.